Alex, thank you so much for joining me today. Super excited to chat with you. And when I was going through your background, it's incredible. All right, so it's very diverse. You've worked at startups in the AI sector. You launched an incubator that was around AI and ML. You've been investing at Bloomberg Beta, Unshackled Ventures. You were a venture fellow, or still are a venture fellow. 8VC, Bessemer, Contrary. You love to read, write code. So really, really impressive background. Tell me, how'd you get started in AI, and what was your initial interest?
Yeah, thanks for having me on your pod, Andrew. Happy to be here. So I guess I started out in AI during high school. Wanted to get my hands dirty on some research and decided to cold email some professors. So I actually cold emailed Josh Tenenbaum, who's at the Computational Cognitive Sciences lab at MIT and was doing some data collection research for one of his AI projects and paper. And yeah, didn't really understand anything about AI back then. This is 2017. So was in high school. Saw the potential of helping humans learn better through understanding how machines learn, and also building kind of these intelligence machines that hopefully generally intelligent one day, but right now very good at specific tasks to help humans get rid of the tedious work that we do day to day. So those are sort of the initial motivations of getting into the field.
That's cool. Okay, so it was mostly from a standpoint of like how to help people work more efficiently. Was that like kind of the initial interest or driver for you to dive deeper into AI?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of tasks, right, during our work that is not that appealing, like document entry or replying to the same type of emails. And, I think humans are meant to have more creative tasks and do more creative things with their lives. So yeah, getting rid of the tedium in our work days, that's one motivation. The other is, since I think intelligence is like a hard subject, and even consciousness is a hard subject to understand. Maybe like recreating that with the AI perspective would help you like decode some of how the brain functions.
That's so cool. It's really incredible that you were thinking about this deeply in 2017, because now like everyone's talking about AI, everyone wants to learn about AI. Tell me about AI and ML. It probably wasn't even called AI back then. It was probably called like ML, like machine learning.
Yeah.
Or maybe that's wrong. But so tell me about like just the viewpoint of that industry or sector or whatever you want to call it, field of study, whatever, comparative to since 2017 till now. Because I feel like it's only been a few years, but it's been a crazy leap from my outside perspective.
Yeah, there's definitely, I think, even a lot of hype back then. But there was more of a focus on like computer vision. Now I think there's more of a transition to like natural language processing and obviously large language models. But yeah, back then I think there was still a lot of interest. So one of the initial motivations of starting Pi, which is this incubator I started that executes sort of AI projects and ideas, is that there's all this kind of built up demand and interest in the field. Even this is in 2019, but there wasn't enough sort of people working on things in the field or enough resources to support people who are interested in getting into it more. And it seems, I think at first very daunting, where there's, you need to know like calculus or linear algebra or like statistics and probability. But I think the biggest difference now is a lot of these large companies have like built up these models, and I think the background in math has lowered, or to be able to use these large language models or even like cutting edge computer vision models in your company or just for fun, you really don't need to understand like the low level abstraction. You just need to be like a somewhat good engineer that can use the API. I mean, a lot of the behavior of these models, because they're getting so large, is hard to understand. So it's sort of like the scientist has built up this like Frankenstein-ish creature, and you're trying to like retroactively understand like how the inner functions work and sort of prod at it almost. Like even the OpenAI folks to understand like GPT-4, to the lowest level of detail, and why is it doing what it's doing? Like probably not. So yeah, I think that has changed. significantly, and that's been really interesting. Yeah.
So your incubator Pi, you said you launched in 2019. What were those early companies or projects or ideas that people were working on back then comparative to now? Because again, it's been a short number of years, but I feel like there's been a lot of crazy progress. So yeah, actually, I'll just ask that. I don't want to dig too deep here, but
yeah, I think definitely, as I mentioned, more projects in natural language processing. So at first, there were like some computer vision projects, and it's pretty evenly distributed. Like people's interests were, there was a brain computer interface project where they were using brain signals to decode different like hand gestures. There was like a reinforcement learning project where they're training like this simulated drone and with like Unity, which is like the game engine. But now there's been way more like GPT focused projects. So I think we were pretty early to get like GPT-2 access. So the early innings of sort of the large language models was people trying to generate jazz music with GPT-2, which is like, it's not, the jazz music is not that good, but you know, the point is to get familiar with the tools. And we saw some teams kind of build websites, like generated websites, like with GPT. So there's been use cases of, oh, let's like make a Shopify storefront and see whether like GPT-2 can write this kind of basic like HTML code. And now it's definitely evolved to like more complex things. But yeah, that's back then.
In terms of the similarities of use cases, so okay, so you're saying it's like drastically different compared to 2019 to today in terms of those use cases, right? Because I guess in 2019 there's a lot of like experimental like exactly. Maybes, and now would you say it's a lot of like, no, this is going to have a direct impact on like, I don't know, the accounting industry or whatever? Is that how you're seeing that move today?
Yeah, in terms of AI's impact on industry, I think the most impact is definitely felt by like, or where I think the most impact will occur is sort of industries that are orthogonal to software or AI. So for example, just really antiquated and traditional industries like agriculture or supply chain logistics. A lot of those industries or companies in those sectors don't really use software. So AI will be like 100x improvement from like no software or minimal software. And I think a lot of companies, but most of the interest is on sort of like the sexy industries, which is like B2B SaaS or like some consumer AI play, which I think is a bit oversaturated. I don't know if who the clear winners will be, but there's the majority of the interest of building AI companies seems to be in like B2B SaaS or consumer AI, which is not sort of this use case of taking someone who doesn't have software and introducing AI.
So are these companies that you're seeing or kind of, looking at, are they like wrappers around GPT, or are they totally novel AI models and doing all sorts of crazy stuff? Or are they just like a lot of like wrappers that are helping out this specific B2B product or whatnot?
Yeah, I think wrappers could be, but I like the wrapper to be as niche or as like fine-tuned as possible. If you have a generalized wrapper, for example, to write marketing copies, that's not that interesting. But all of a sudden, you're sort of looking at maybe like Harvey, they're doing like AI for legal, and it's like a highly fine-tuned and specialized model where they might be taking some like LLM in the background and fine-tuning it on their data set and then doing some feature engineering or sort of like that. And I think that that's a better play in terms of the GPT wrappers where yeah, you're looking at a specific domain and you're fine tuning with the help of like domain experts in your company where you have some like special insight in the domain.
So I read a lot on Twitter and just kind of like seeing in the news, everyone saying, okay, because of AI now, startups are going to need to raise a lot less money and they can do much more with like 10x fewer people. It's just like they're just going to totally, change the game. How accurate is that? Is that like totally on point, or is that, it's kind of like good headline, but not actually very, very true?
It's a great question. I think some startups will definitely be able to leverage AI to reduce kind of the human labor needed. I think those roles could be like what I mentioned, like writing marketing copies or doing SEO or generating content. But I think you still need like one or two or sort of a small team of pivotal humans to approve that type of content and know how to like prompt engineer the best type of content that fits the company. So I don't think it's completely weeded out, but there's definitely like people who are mediocre sort of at like, I guess marketing or content will definitely feel the pressure of like these models being a replacement for their role. But I think the engineering potential is huge. I know a lot of folks are using like Code Interpreter for like all engineers should be using Code Interpreter or some variation of like GitHub Copilot to help them write more code and debug. It's actually very good at debugging. And I think the sort of cost of starting like a new side project or like testing out a company idea has been dramatically lowered, because instead of saying, okay, now if I'm trying to like do a new company, I need to first make a landing page or like MVP. You can use like Code Interpreter to do all that, to build your landing page, to kind of build you the MVP or like assist you in building. So I think we're seeing like the democratization of like trying out new businesses or trying new ideas, which is I'm super excited about.
So, okay, so I feel like AI was like, started as probably like a field of study, and then it turned into like a kind of like a technology. And now I feel like it's kind of like a tool, but it's not necessarily, it's just like using it. It's like, hey, before people would write and then they started typing with computers, and now it's like AI. It's just like, of course, like everyone's going to use AI in their business to help them do X, Y, Z. How do you see that playing out? Is like every business in the world going to just have AI for whatever functions they're doing that's going to help them with their tasks, or yeah, well, how do you think it will evolve? Like just like how everyone uses computers today, or what are you thinking?
Yeah, I think the behavioral shift will come slowly. We're sort of still pretty early on the wave. And that for me, I see AI as taking on like three roles. So one is sort of a peer or a colleague who can do like a set of tasks that you want to delegate or is sort of on the same intelligence as you. And you can also see AI sort of as a teacher or a tutor. So you're trying to learn a new subject, or you're trying to have an alternative explanation of a concept. So this is especially helpful for like students or people who don't really have like the resources to access a tutor, but wants kind of complicated concepts learned or explained. So that's the second role. And the third role is sort of AI as an intern, where you're giving it these like low level tasks. For example, like writing SQL queries or finding bugs in your code or finding grammar mistakes in your writing. Just like, I guess, not your level of intelligence, but slightly lower, but it's really good at it. So I think these three roles will play like a huge role in everyone's lives, and different people will have different demands for like the roles AI take on. Like if you're a student, you're obviously going to use, I guess, the tutor or the mentor role more. But if you're like running your own business, you might want like multiple AI interns or like AI colleagues to help you handle some tasks or reply to some emails.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, I want to dig more into AI agents soon, but going back to the AI and the startup landscape, you're basically talking about how the pace of iteration is going to be dramatically different compared to before. People will be able to try, the pace of iteration is going to like 5-10x or some crazy amount. What else do you think is going to happen to the startup ecosystem? Because some people are like doom and gloom, like, oh my gosh, like startups are over. It's all going to be Microsoft and Google that like do every idea because of AI. Other people are like, no, this is amazing for startups. It's like the most powerful tool ever. I guess, what do you think about that?
I think the big tech players, like you saw the Anthropic deal with Amazon and all these sort of deals happening where you have large language model provider partnering with an incumbent. I think AI will sort of become like the next AWS, and then you have these like sort of cloud providers where you can choose, but instead it's sort of large language model providers and APIs. So that will be the play for bigger companies, but I think there's still a lot of opportunity for like smaller companies, as I said, where you're operating with a specific domain and you're very knowledgeable in that domain. You have a specialized data set, and then you know how to fine tune a large language model to perform that tasks very well. I think there's a lot of opportunities there. So I think there's and those opportunities, the bigger companies won't be as interested in going after. So I think there's room for entrepreneurs.
Okay, so very equal response in the sense of big companies will benefit, small companies will benefit, everyone's going to benefit. It's going to be akin to like plugging in and using the internet. It's going to be something normal that everyone does.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, very cool. Okay, AI agents. I've been doing a little bit of digging because I think that they're fascinating. I don't know if you know a program called ChatDev. It's like this, almost like this game. It looks like a Stardew Valley almost, or like Pokemon. And there's these little AI agents you can program. It's like, okay, this is the CEO of your company. This is the CTO. And all right, guys, we're going to make software, or it's going to be a media company where we're writing about fitness, and there'll be certain AI agents that will like go do the research on fitness and write art. And there'll be other people that will take that research and give it to the writers. They write about it. And then there's like proofreaders, and then there's like publishers or whatever. So they publish on social media. So anyways, basically talking about like an autonomous company almost. We'll start high level. What are your thoughts on AI agents? And then going deeper, what do you think that they're capable of? Like, will we be able to run autonomous companies? Is that coming soon?
Yeah, I think there's also like the projects I'm more familiar with in the agent spaces, like Baby AGI and those sort of open source projects. And it seems they're very demo oriented. I think a lot of people built great demos for Twitter for going viral specifically. But if you really try these agents, they're actually very brittle. Like if one component fails, the error sort of just cascades down the line. The CEO agent makes a bad decision. The whole company sort of fails. And there isn't enough, I think, like guardrailing around that. And even I think error recovery is a very difficult problem for these agents, like recognizing, oh, this went wrong. Like, how do I backtrace and then redo this task, or like think of another task to do? So I think to get it fully autonomous, it's still like a lot of work. And I have friends who played around with agents, and it seems like it's also a lot of work for the human to go inside and fix it when it stumbles. That's like a non-trivial amount of work to set it back sort of on the right path again. So yeah, I think in summary, we're still quite far off complete like AI autonomous company and workflow, but we're not far off from saying AI getting very good at one specific part of the workflow, where at either ends, there's like human A and human B, right? Getting the output and sort of prompting a specific type of input.
So what would be an example of that specificity, like that certain task that the AI agent can do today probably pretty well? Would it be like, if you're that media company writing about fitness, would it be like sourcing the articles and like, surfacing new fitness articles, or like what would that task be?
Yeah, I think the biggest one I'm familiar with, because I'm an engineer, is like writing code, helping you debug and generating like skeleton code for you to go off of. And in terms of marketing content, I think it may be good if you serve it a really long and fancy prompt and you sort of inject information about your industry and your insights into it. It may be able to come up with good content ideas, but the tone is still quite a big problem, where all these LLMs spit out, they sound very verbose. They're sort of ranty and they're sort of going in a circle. And then if you visit some website that is using like an AI generated article for SEO purposes, you clearly know it's an AI generated article. So I think there's still a lot of like human editing needed in the process, but it's definitely been like reducing time if you're trying to publish more content, especially in the brainstorming stage and maybe generating like the first draft or like at least the outline, but you have to really like control the voice and sort of the diction in that blog post. And you can't just let it like reign free 100%, or else it's possible if you just want to pump out like low quality content to boost your SEO, or to just get more content out there. That's like a mass volume approach using AI. But if you want high quality content, I don't think it's there yet.
Okay, so going to a kind of a different sector, I guess is a little bit kind of like AI agents, but AI companions, because I've been seeing a lot of articles that are talking about these chatbots that are like replica AI, character AI. They have tens of millions of users, and a lot of these users are like dating their AI companion bots, right? Which I think is pretty crazy, pretty cool. What are your thoughts on AI as like our friends? Like not even for accomplishing certain tasks with work, because that's obviously like super useful, but in terms of like someone that you can, or something that you can connect with, almost like therapy. Like, like
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on AI as our new friends?
Yeah, I think this is a very contentious topic. I've been in a few Twitter spaces. I spoke in one of them. I was listening in on a bunch, and it seems to me that um, there are two sides of the argument. One, I guess the negative side is since these AI companion companies, what they want most is sort of the user engagement. They want you to stay on the app, so they're this sort of incentivized to help you get off the app or build better social skills. Their number one objective is like get as much ads as possible and help you kind of stay hooked on this app. So I think helping like users develop that sort of unhealthy obsession is a con that may come out of it, and not helping them fundamentally like get better socially in the real world. And that's just driving everybody towards more isolation. But on the flip side, I think it's possible to say like maybe you don't have access to like social environments in your life, or you live somewhere remote, or you're trying to improve socially or in relationships. And it's possible that these agents or like companions are able to help you like sort of build up that level of skill set. So I think there's like pros and cons. And I think it's very interesting that most AI companion users are actually women, because the narrative sort of have like the psychological appeal. And yeah, I think it's a really interesting space to watch. And there's a lot of, if you search up like AI girlfriend or AI companions on the App Store, there's a lot of companies competing in this space. And yeah, I think one interesting use case I've seen is, have you heard about like Karen AI?
Yes, she was. Karen, wasn't she an OnlyFans model that wanted to scale up her ability to chat with her fans or something like that?
Yeah, exactly. So she made this AI bot, basically fine-tuned all her data on some LLM, right? And then served it as like a chat bot where she charges per minute. I think that model, not only for OnlyFans, but for like other creators or other influencers, could be really interesting, because a lot of relationships in social media right now is parasocial, where you have an audience and you're sort of trying to engage with the bigger creator, but the bigger creator is not really replying to you, and they sort of pretend that you never exist, or very rarely like engages with you, right? So that I think that's where a lot of the loneliness is coming from, because of this like one-way interaction. But I think the really smart businesses in the future will be able to sort of fine-tune chatbots, or even like some more advanced like AI agents, or even holograms or something like that of the creator based on their past content, because there's like they already have a lot of content because they're a creator, and sort of scale like this level of like interaction with their fans. And I think that that's like a super interesting opportunity compared to like companions.
Totally. Yeah, no, that's super interesting. Okay, so I guess, do you think there's an issue that users don't, or that users know that this is not the actual movie star or celebrity or whoever that I'm talking to? This is a AI version of them. And is there an issue that like of them becoming friends with this celebrity AI, even though they know it's an AI and not the actual celebrity?
I think if they know it's an AI to begin with, it should be okay. And they're sort of willingly engaging in this interaction, knowing that it's an AI, but it's still fun and meaningful for them. I think what's dangerous is people not knowing it's an AI and they think it's an actual human. And I think that's a lot of even practices of like companies with chatbots on their website, like just make that as transparent as possible. And sometimes AI agents can be like even more efficient with the task. Like sometimes I want to refund a DoorDash order, and then the bot deals with me, and the bot is actually super efficient at handling the refund. I have no problem sort of talking to the DoorDash bot rather than like an operator on the other line. So I think as long as you're transparent, like, and when the user wants to speak to a human in those cases, they can. I think users will be okay. But if you're not, that might be a problem.
Totally. Yeah. So AI companions was a use case that I was not, it was not expected for me, at least. I'm not like deep in the AI space. So, but yourself, since, early on, you've been deep in the space. Is that something that you're like, oh, this is definitely going to be like a major early use case? Or did that also catch you a little by surprise?
Definitely caught me by surprise, but I think it makes sense looking at it now, because another sort of, apart from like companies innovating in sort of antiquated sectors or traditional sectors without software, another type of companies I really like is those that really understand like human behaviors or like deep psychologic needs of humans and sort of build products to serve those needs, instead of trying to introduce like a new habit. For example, the loneliness market is huge. A lot of people are lonely, and there's this need for intimacy, for friendship, for relationships, and AI companions definitely filled that void for some folks. And yeah, then it definitely made sense because I'm like, yeah, this is definitely like a hierarchy of needs thing, and this is the perfect thing to slot into that.
Okay, so going off that logic of like, okay, Maslow's hierarchy, human behavior, and AI's capabilities, what are some use cases that like you think a lot of people are not thinking about right now potentially that you're thinking, okay, this is clearly going to be, AI is going to take this over because I don't know, it's as you mentioned, like people are lonely, AI can fulfill that void. So any other sectors or ideas that you have where you're like, oh my gosh, AI is ripe to take over X industry or to create this product?
Yeah, in terms of thinking along sort of in the same vein, I know when I was at Bloomberg Beta, there was this blog post that one of the partners wrote about called like silver unicorns. I think that's what it's
Silver unicorn.
silver unicorns,
Okay.
where there's actually a huge market of the elderly, where I think most technology companies nowadays are focused on like the younger generation, like Gen Z or people in their 20s or 30s, sort of as the baby boomers age. The market of the elderly is going to sort of expand a lot, and there's going to be a lot of needs for in that market and a lot of spending power. For example, they can feel lonely as well, but it's sort of a different type of AI companionship where it's not filling this like AI girlfriend, boyfriend. Yeah, but it's more like AI son, AI daughter, or sort of like someone to talk to, someone to tell their stories to. So I think that is a very underrated market just in general, sort of just the elderly. And yeah, just building software in that space is great. But I know there's like very few companies doing it.
That's cool. So that's more so. That's not like robots interact. Physical robots interacting with the elderly. That's more of like an app that's similar to this boyfriend girlfriend application, but really focused on just like nothing relationship wise, just more of like friends,
Exactly.
friend, and okay, cool, very interesting. Any other? Sorry, I'm picking your brain here, but I'm super curious. Any other sectors or industries that you're kind of like, ooh, this is ripe for disruption by AI because suddenly labor has gotten so much cheaper because of these new models.
Yeah, I think anything formulaic or anything that is tedious, for example, accounting, or even consulting a little bit, or banking, where you're generating these PowerPoints, or these sort of reports, and there's ways that large language models can synthesize data very efficiently from many sources and kind of generate outlines for the PowerPoints, and then reduce the labor of consultants or these investment bankers. And yeah, I think research roles in general, obviously, marketing and creating content. But I guess for all these roles, they're just reducing the workload, but you still need the human for, I guess, what information you want the model to interpret or ingest, and also checking the outcomes and sort of editing and finalizing the output.
So so consulting is really interesting to me
Yeah,
because consulting is such like a multifaceted uh, job where it's like you don't really know what the situation is that you're going to be trying to consult for that day. So like in your mind, the AI agent model, whatever, is ingesting all that data around that specific company and that specific problem. And then with that, it'll be able to be like, hey, I recommend consulting bot recommends that we, sell product B instead of product A. Is that possible today? I feel like that seems like it's kind of far off, but I could be totally wrong.
I think it's to a degree possible. For consulting specifically, maybe humans will handle more of like the actual relationship aspect, because understanding or like communicating with the stakeholders and your clients, that's like a major part of consulting. And that might be more geared towards humans. But in terms of the analytical or like the quantitative work, Code Interpreter can maybe do some of that. I've seen Wharton Professor on Twitter, like Ethan, he wrote some Code Interpreter queries where it sort of analyzed like a data set and it produced okay like scientific paper, and it found some trends and it gave some recommendations and it explained some variables. So we're seeing that emerging. So yeah, so I think it can definitely aid the human in like the research and the data side of consulting.
Okay, so defensibility. I think a lot of people are saying, oh, no more companies are defensible because you can copy paste a product in like 2 seconds now. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think, yeah, it's a topic I've been like extremely interested in. Just what are moats now?
Mhm.
What are the best moats? I think I sort of wrote this list of like the ideal AI company. And I pinned it to my Twitter
Oh,
profile,
cool.
where sort of the attributes of like a company in the future that I really want to see. And I think the moats are going to be like, again, network effects, like social networks. Also the brand is an incredible moat. So the moat maybe will be less technology or product focused, but more of community, brand, or network focused. I think an underrated moat is sort of like the top of mindness moat, or almost like how ingrained is this product into like your user's behavior. For example, if when you think of like a question you want answered, the old behavior might be, oh, let's like pull up Google, and then you instantly that's sort of like in your behavioral loop. Whereas right now it's like, okay, I want this question answered. Maybe I pull up ChatGPT or some other like large language or Perplexity, like some large language model tool of your choice instead of search. So I think the degree to which the company dominates a user psychology and is sort of ingrained in their habit loop is the best moat, right? That's what everybody wants, but it's very hard to achieve. And yeah, apart from that one moat, like your product can be like inferior, but I think once people really like use you on a daily basis and they form this habit, it will just be ingrained. And yeah, next to that, I think it's what I said, like the marketing, the brand, and the network moat. And the moat that we're seeing for technology companies, which is, oh, let's build the best product, or like this software that 10x's or 100x's the old software, that is starting to lower, as he alluded to. And that's my general take on this.
Wow. So you think technical moats are kind of becoming are going to become much less relevant than they have, in the past? You think that it's going to be mainly these more non-technical moats of like community, network, habit, etc.
Yeah, exactly. I think the large language model providers will definitely have a strong technical moat. But if you're a B2B SaaS startup, like you want to rethink, or if you're a consumer AI company, I think the real moat may not be the technology, because the cost of say a competitor building up the same software with like their team of AI interns and a few software engineers is like drastically lower. So what's going to differentiate them is like their place, I guess, in their customers' hearts, so to speak.
Let's see. If you had to launch a company today, and it could be any type of company ever, but it had to be bootstrapped, what would that company be? And then question number two is, you're launching a company, but your investors give you $1 billion from day one. Here, Alex, here's that. What would you do? So I want to hear like the bootstrap version and then the $1 billion version.
Sure. Yeah. So just riffing off of the top of my head, I think the bootstrap version, I really like what you're doing, and just media companies in general, where you're sort of building distribution first. You're distributing good content around vertical, and then really deeply understanding your audience, because when you're a media company, you're creating content, you're getting a lot of like feedback from your audience instantly on what they like, what they don't like. That signal is super useful, rather than you say building a product first, or just going out there and trying to get like customer interviews or what they want. You're sort of testing that with content first, and understanding like the ideal profile of a customer, and then launching products around that space. So I think the bootstrap version will have to be like an AI media company, that also launches software products around it that are useful. And yeah, I think media companies are both fragile and defensible at the same time. They're fragile if you sort of don't have like a technical footing into, because a lot of media companies are run by like marketing folks, right? And it seems like they don't have a deep domain expertise. So I think initially they're very good at like getting traction and getting traffic and getting an audience. But later on, when they really try to understand like what products to build or what software to build to better serve this audience, they either need to like hire experts in this specific field, or I think it's extremely difficult. So, but I think the combination of like media first and then software around it, or just products around it, is super powerful. And yeah, that's sort of the ideal bootstrap version of a company I would build. And for the $1 billion company, I think there's with that kind of capital, there's a lot of things you could do. I alluded to before where there are these antiquated industries that needs a lot of change in software. Just hiring like extrememely talented sales team and like a VP of sales who have sold in that sector, and also hiring like a talented engineering team to build like the AI solution or the AI solution plus software to help that sector. That would be something I would do. So kind of like Flexport, but with an AI focus.
That's awesome. All right. So what business sector technology besides AI has you most excited recently?
Yeah, I think I've been looking a lot into like media businesses and content creation in general. So yeah, how to build an audience and how to distribute your ideas, because you're very familiar with this. Like interesting people reach out to you, and then you can learn interesting things or opportunities and ideas from others when you're sort of putting your thoughts out there on the internet. So that sort of business I've been giving a lot of attention to. Yeah, just building businesses that build distribution.
That's awesome. Very cool. Yeah, no, it's really incredible. I think Twitter especially, I think it's like been the most impactful tool in my life, probably, because you're right. You put out your thoughts, you talk to people, you just get out there, and then things happen, which is really, really incredible to think about that something like Twitter can cause that, because it's just like this funny app where you like tweet these small sentences, and now it's like all these opportunities arise, and all these learnings, and it's really, really, really cool stuff. All right. So I heard you say earlier, you talked about brain machine interfaces, brain computer interfaces. I'm super intrigued by those. What are your thoughts on BCIs, BMIs, whatever you call them? We'll just say BCI. What are your thoughts on BCIs? Are we close?
Yeah, so I worked at Neurable for around 10 months back in 2020 to 2021. So I'm a bit outdated on like the industry since I haven't been in it for a year or so, and moved
That's
super
crazy.
quickly.
Wait, so already outdated?
Yeah, I mean, Neuralink is always going at it, and I don't know what's going on in there because everybody has an NDA.
Right.
But yeah, I think we're still very far off. It's very hard to read high fidelity signals from the brain, especially if you're like non-invasive and you're not like putting the device into your scalp. I think you can definitely extract some signal from like on like non-invasive brain computer interfaces, like the AirPods post I made a while back, where Apple filed a patent to put EEG sensors into the AirPods. I think they're reading signal from the temporal lobe, which is like these lobes on the side of your brain. And you can definitely get high level, like very non-fine grained data. Some applications could be built that are interesting there. But yeah, we're very far off from like reading your thoughts. I don't know if that will ever happen. That's like a very sci-fi scenario, but we are close to, say, like understanding when you might be tired, or what type of Spotify playlist or music helps you be most productive. I think those sort of insights we can maybe extract in the next like 5 years or 10 years in a decently confident degree.
Very cool. And this will be non-invasive, right?
Yes. Yeah.
do you think that, okay, so for example, AI and these AI companions, like that's a use case that took off pretty low stakes in the sense of like just conversations, right? It's not like it's like a, you know, plugging AI into like our missile defense technology or something crazy like that. It's just like regular chats. BCIs, do you see it? Do you think it's going to be some sort of fun, friendly, low stake use case that takes off first, or do you think it's going to be something more, I don't know, much more high stakes, much more intense?
I think there are companies tackling both. So Neuralink and Kernel, which is doing non-invasive, Brian Johnson's company. I think those companies are more going towards the clinical setting or tools for research. For companies like Neuroball and Whoop and other companies sort of in the biometric, consumer biometric space, they'll be going after like things that can improve your life right now, like tracking a lot of your health data and recommending you things to do to help you focus better. So I think that there's definitely both, and the research case might take longer to pan out, but they do have a lot more people and a lot more resources and capital going towards that. So maybe it'll be the same timeline for both, but the consumer is definitely coming more and more into the mainstream. Like just several years ago, I don't think people have heard of like what an Oura Ring is, and now a lot of people have that. And you know, AirPods, if they add this patent, it will be just, that's a lot of people with AirPods who can just get their data from their brain, which is cool. Yeah, in summary, I think there's both the consumer opportunity, but more clinical research. And I'm not exactly too certain on like the timeline for either.
All right, so Apple kind of made the metaverse cool again, if you will, by their AR headset that's coming out. What are your thoughts on AR? Like, are you excited about AR? Is it kind of like something that you pay attention to a little bit, or you know, what yeah? Just tell me your general thoughts on augmented reality.
I definitely pay attention to a little bit, but not too knowledgeable in it. I think AR is a lot more interesting than VR because humans do want to see reality as it is and like sort of be in the presence of other humans and be social in the real world. That's my hypothesis. And like for VR to work, you need to be in like the pandemic setting for the rest of time where you're sort of forced into this like next best alternative. But yeah, I think AI is super interesting, and like even some use cases of training folks of doing like specific know-how tasks. I think that's the biggest opportunity I'm excited about, where you're trying to fix a bike and you don't know where things are, and sort of AR can guide you in that sense, or you're training to be like a machine operator or training to be a firefighter. And then you sort of have this like AI tutor almost that helps you in the real world manipulate like physical objects. Yeah, I think that's where AR is headed.
Yeah, I agree with you that AR is more exciting than VR, but well, that's like, I think most people are going to experience quote unquote the metaverse through augmented reality. I think it's going to be a normal set of glasses or contacts that we wear, and it's going to be just AR all around us all the time. That's in the future, not coming next year or two. But VR for me is like almost like playing video games. It's like you know, people will go and play video games or go and experience that. It's really fun. It's really engaging. And stuff that they can do for hours, but it's not like, yeah, you can't like be in VR. You can't play video games all day. I mean, I guess some people can if they make a living through streaming or whatever, but that's kind of how I see VR. It's more of like the real experiential, you know, immersive technology versus AR is more of like the casual, productivity, fun, kind of simple use case.
Yeah, I think that's a great distinction. I think VR does have its place, where if you're trying to just escape like our physical world or go into a reality that can't be possible currently, like in this alternative universe, that's definitely like where you can go into like entirely different world in VR. And yeah, I think that's that most compelling use case. And maybe just like being more creative, because you're still constrained by like laws of physics in the real world, but you're not really in VR.
It's funny you mentioned that. I was just with a buddy of mine in Singapore, and he built this virtual gallery in VR, and he had a big, art piece that he expanded to be 10 stories high, and he built this like elevator slash like scaffolding type of product that you would kind of move throughout the art piece and like, observe it, and it was really 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 cool. In my mind, it was like very immersive. Like I was like, this is incredible, such a cool art viewing experience. But you're right about, it's kind of like escaping the world and going into this new place to just kind of have fun versus like go be productive and like using AR or something. All right. Well, I'm a big Web3 guy. I know Web3 gets a lot of hate. Some people love it. Some people hate it. What is your opinion on Web3?
I mean, I'm not that informed again as AI, but some of my opinions based on talking to some friends working in Web3 who have since pivoted to AI. It seems to me that a lot of entrepreneurs have started in Web3 but pivoted into AI, and Web3, some of Web3 seems to be very frothy, where I can't really tell from an outsider perspective whether something is actually like legitimate or they're just pulling money together for some coin and then just like dumping it. And so, and I guess like NFTs in general, I personally can't like differentiate like what is actually real and what isn't. So that's like one of the biggest reasons I haven't gone into Web3. And I think the technology is very interesting. Like crypto is super interesting, but it's still very early. Whereas for me, what drew me most into AI is there's this actually fundamental like change in the underlying like software. There's actually like sort of like these models that are actually working in infrastructures today. And what Web3 just seems to be too early. And yeah, I can't like tell what's real and what isn't.
All right. So Bitcoin. Do you like Bitcoin?
I don't have any Bitcoin.
No Bitcoin? No Bitcoin?
I have some Ethereum.
Okay, there you go. You have some Ethereum. That's good. So for NFTs, I think NFTs are really interesting in the sense that they're just like containers or like wrappers. You can basically put whatever you want in them. So for me, it's like a big revolution in financialization of certain assets. So like art, for example, art is just art. And but now it can be traded as digital art, whereas before, like you copy paste unlimited times your digital art. There's some people that like don't like digital art or don't like NFT art because they say, oh well, you can't touch it, like you can't feel it and put it on your wall, which is funny because I'm like, no one's touching their painting anyways. Like I'm not you're not putting your hands all over your painting. Like just put a TV screen up there. It's like the same thing as a frame. But like, does a use case like that, even though it's not productive or there's no utility to that, does that make sense to you, or are you still like, like I'm not a big art guy. I'm not really sure.
I think NFTs, like just the whole premise of owning a JPEG is just like struck me as pretty funny. Like, how can you own a JPEG? Like, I can say it's mine and like you can replicate it infinite times, right? Like it's just a digital image. It's just some set of pixels, where I see real art as being like, okay, there's only one Mona Lisa. It's right there. And you're not supposed to touch it, but if you really wanted to, it's like the craft of the artist is sort of there. And I think a lot of what I appreciate about good art is the craft that went into it and the process of the artist. And it seems like if you're distributing some like digital art, it might look very aesthetic and appealing, but it's not really like, there's not a lot of craft or thought that went into like generating a specific NFT if you're just like minting like 100.
Oh, that's a bold claim. I would love to dig deeper on that, but okay. I don't want to spend too much time on NFTs or Web3, but just wanted to, I love to hear your take because I think it's super interesting. And I think, as an industry, Web3 has a lot to do in the sense of like showing that, hey, this is actually real. And this is what this is used for. And this is what this is used for. So you're right about like, even me, like I'm in the space pretty much 24/7 and figuring out what is real and what is a scam. It's not always easy. Right. So, exactly, yeah. So no, a lot of valid criticisms for sure. All right. So metaverse was the hot thing. Our investment firm, Sophermion, our whole thing is like, hey, we're accelerating the emergence of the metaverse. We're focused on the metaverse. That was in 2019. in 2021, Meta changed their name. Or was it 2021? Maybe it was 22. I think it's 21.
Yeah.
And like suddenly metaverse was like not cool, right? It was like, oh, metaverse is so anti-cool now. What are your thoughts on the metaverse? Like for me, it's a marketing term that means a whole bunch of different technologies working together to create a more, immersive and real internet. But what is your opinion on the metaverse? Like, what does it even mean to you?
I like your definition of like a more immersive internet, where you can do, it's sort of also merging VR and in some senses AR, where you have these abilities that you can't do in the real world, and they become sort of an extension of what you could do in the digital world. So I think that use case is super interesting. But yeah, Meta's whole rebrand, it sort of looks like Wii Sports. I mean, the graphics aren't great, right? But they're trying, and they're getting a lot of employees to sort of like be in the metaverse to care, like to increase the usage, which is fine. It's understandable, but I think we're still really, really early in getting everything to work properly. And that this also just goes back to like a thought, which is do people prefer to be in the real world or the digital world? And I think there are definitely like certain activities that are not possible in the real world that you do prefer to do in the metaverse. Or if you physically can't be present with a friend, you might want to connect in the metaverse. So I definitely think it has purposes. But if you say you live like a few blocks away from your friend, or you have like a very strong social community around you, I think in very few cases anyone would choose to like go in the metaverse in that scenario.
Yeah. For me, the metaverse is not really like a virtual world platform. It's not like Meta's, or Facebook's Meta or virtual world or Horizons or whatnot. It's more of like it's like a conceptual, it's like a marketing term, really. It's the ultimate end goal is like Ready Player One, type of a fantasy. That's gonna, take some time to get there. But I think that's what, when I say metaverse, that's like where we're headed to. In your mind, is that similar, or do you think about it more of like, no, it's a kind of a virtual world platform, kind of like Meta?
Yeah, I think of it in my mind. That's closer to my definition, like a virtual world building.
Cool. Okay.
Platform.
Makes sense. All right. So you're active in, with different venture funds and active in investing. What is the situation right now within the early stage, venture ecosystem? Because it's been pretty bloody the past 2 years, but with AI and your area specifically, is that turning around? Because, we're seeing, you mentioned Anthropic just announced yesterday, partnering with Amazon, $4 billion investment. Like some major things are still happening despite broadly, I think there's a lot of weakness. What are your thoughts? How are you? What are you seeing? How is the energy? Is it people excited, or is it kind of like people are still hurting?
It's a great question. I think I'm not doing like investing actively anymore, but from what I'm hearing and seeing, it's a lot of people are getting into AI deals that are not so good, and sort of like wrapper deals at like a very insane valuation, which is very dangerous because you don't know how defensible these wrappers are, right? And you're getting in at this like insane price because there's so much hype around AI. So for the founders themselves to deliver like on the pre-seed valuation and kind of go on this trajectory of this hockey stick trajectory is just very, very difficult. So I think if I were a wrapper currently, or like if I'm thinking about investing in GPT powered wrappers, I would wait till there's more like concrete data or customers for the metric for the wrapper, or it's sort of becoming like a more sticky use case because this space is evolving so fast. But I also understand the worry of like, okay, if I'm not getting in this early, like I might miss the next like biggest thing. But I think the wrappers are just the first inning of the AI evolution. And in the future, as I said, like when there are software transforming like entire industries that become like the de facto AI for like agriculture, that's like the deal I would want to get in, instead of like giving like a wrapper a 20 mil valuation without any customers.
Totally. Okay. Makes sense. So it sounds like there's, cause it sounds positive in the sense that there's activity, at least there's investment. People are excited. There's energy there versus I think there's a lot of other areas of startup world that are like hurting and, need capital. Right. So I'd say that I agree. There is some froth, but it's at least there's investment and
Yes.
energy. That's broadly positive. All right, Alex, this has been absolutely stellar, but it's time for the closing questions.
Okay. Sounds great.
Alrighty.
Yeah.
What are you bearish on? It could be anything.
Am I bearish on? Maybe like most GPT wrappers.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I just don't think, I think they're sort of a transient behavior, and they will be phased out or consolidated in the future. And, like if you're trying to be the south, the 100th or the thousandth, like marketing copy generator for blogs, like, are you really that differentiated? So I think the whole category of like GPT wrappers, I'm a bit bearish on, but there are definitely solid ones in there. But yeah.
So these wrappers, you think they'll just get like absorbed by whatever, like you're saying, like copy, writing copy. We'll just say blogs, like medium.com would like just acquire or just implement their own wrapper to be like, hey, like we're now just this is now just like a feature. It's not an actual company.
Yeah, I think that's one where bigger companies, because they're so sensitive to their data, like just large enterprises, they will build their internal version of the tool of like, say, AI for marketing copy for X company. And there might be one or two GPT like writing wrapper companies that helps all the small, medium businesses or the consumer use case. But there's just like hundreds of them at the moment. And I think most of them will eventually like either be acquired or sort of like not get enough usage and sort of die out.
Totally. All right. What are you bullish on?
Yeah, I think I'm bullish on anything that has distribution or just network effects in general. That's become part of the customer's habit or have this plan of becoming sort of the habit in the new age, because AI is so new. And I think us in general, we haven't decided like which AI tools will be here in the next 5 to 10 years, or which ones we'll be using on like a daily or weekly basis. And the opportunity to like be the person to be like or the tool to be used on a daily basis for a specific like accountant or for a specific lawyer. I think the potential there is huge.
Okay, awesome. Are you an AGI doomer or optimist?
Definitely an optimist. Yeah.
Okay, tell me more, because I feel like there's a lot of really smart people out there that are like, AI is going to destroy the world.
I mean, it's certainly possible, but my view has been, like there's no way to blockade people from developing this technology. Like I think, any sort of control that's imposed, there's always going to be people trying to like accelerate and in the background sort of like push the research forward, push the research into production. And I think the safest way is just to sort of like, share what's going on and keep a pulse on everything as much as possible. And that might be the safest way to do it. But yeah, I understand that, hallucination's a real problem. And if you're hallucinating, for example, on patient like diagnoses, that's bad. So yeah, I think my general stance has been like, don't hinder like the research and the progress, but also just being like wary of like the actual applications of the research.
Totally. Makes sense. All right. What is the best piece of advice you've ever received?
I think two pieces of advice, sort of in combination. One is to just cold DM and cold outreach to more people, because you'll be surprised how accessible people are. And if you've like truly understood their work or have interesting thoughts, they will write back to you. And the other is I wished I've done this earlier, which is like start sharing your thoughts and ideas like broadly and widely as soon as possible, because there is no perfect idea, and you're always iterating on like what you know and what you're trying to learn. And if you start sharing and like if like I think I started writing like some blogs back in 2019, and they're like reading back on them, they're like super immature and sort of funny. But I think it's a great start, and then you sort of build up your writing skill, and then it's sort of a forcing function also for you to think more clearly and concisely, which is interesting apart from the getting inbound and getting interesting conversations like this. So yeah, both cold outreach and just sharing ideas.
Love that. All right, last question. What motivates you?
What motivates me is something I call meta problems, which is a set of the sort of class of problems where once you solve the meta problem, a bunch of problems becomes easier to solve, or solved. For example, I think building schools is a meta problem because you're helping a bunch of people get smarter, and those students go on to do great things themselves. And so it's like a exponential and multiplying factor into like solving like a fundamental issue. Also, I think intelligence or just like AI in general is a meta problem because you're essentially unlocking like productivity, right, for like the future of work or for different industries. So yeah, that's what motivates me. Just solving like the problems with the biggest impact and leverage. And yeah.
That's awesome. Do you have a blog post on that?
I don't, but there's like
you should write one.
Yeah, I'll try to write. I think it might be like 2 paragraphs though.
It's cool though. It's a very cool concept. First time I'm hearing about it. So that's awesome. Well, Alex, I appreciate you doing this. This is stellar. If people want to reach out, find out more about yourself, and just ping you, where should they go?
Yeah, they should just find me on Twitter or DM me on Twitter at the Alex Kerr, or reach out on LinkedIn. But I'm more responsive on Twitter. So
amazing. I will link that in the show notes.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for
awesome.
the stellar questions, Andrew. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Alex. See ya.
Okay, see you.